Hey, it's News from Heaven. Today we're going to be talking about the thing that everybody in heaven believes. Like and subscribe, comment. This is the situation we find ourselves in. So we're all here living life, and we're going through life on the basic assumptions that make themselves available based on the way the appearances in life are. This is sort of how we think life operates. These are the forces. These is the nature of who we are and the nature of who other people are. But all that really lends itself to a bunch of unhappiness, right? I don't know if you get the same thing I do. What we're looking to do in this show is try to help us break out of that into something brighter and bigger above. So it could just be that there are times when it's necessary to consider a big concept, an intense concept that could change the way we see life, but then also maybe, change the way we experience life, swap out some of these dark clouds for some bright, sunny sunshine flowing in. And if anything is the thing everyone believes in heaven, heaven is this glowy state of mind. I mean, all peace, all joy, all happiness, that's all heaven. That's what Swedenborg labels it. That's the state that, as we'll see, actually makes this afterlife thing that people call heaven. So if anything is a component of heaven, we got to give it to you. And we can chew it over, chew it under, chew it over it, and see how it feels to us. All right, this is Heaven and Hell. You can follow along. Download the book. It's free PDF. Follow along if you want. And we're going to begin number 7, right there, the second section in the beginning of the book. So this is like some foundational stuff. We start with the title, "It is the Lord's divine nature that makes heaven." How does this relate to the way that we think about heaven? And how can this seems like very abstract. How are you ever going to put that into something that improves your day to day? Well, let's take a look, man. Don't give up on it yet. While we call the total assemblage of angels heaven, because they do make it up, what really makes heaven overall and in every specific instance, like the whole heaven and for each of us, is the divine nature that emanates from the Lord, flowing into angels and accepted by them. So we don't just have this divine nature, we have the acceptance as a component. So if we're looking, how do you get to the state of life that we're all trying to get to? It's not even in us. It's in this acceptance of something that's coming from God, and depending on how we accept it. The divine nature that emanates from the Lord is the good intrinsic to love and the truth intrinsic to faith. Classic Swedenborg. The amount angels accept from the Lord what is good and what is true determines the extent to which they are angels and are heaven. So that the extent to which they are angels. Did you think that angels could be on a sliding scale like that? You can be more and more of an angel, less and less of an angel, and are heaven. That it's not that you just pop into a place and I've got my membership ID, so I'm in. I'm an angel. That this is the thing only exists because of the extent to which we're accepting the good and the true from God. So if you had an angelic mind, yeah, that's how they look, and you have these two things coming out of the Lord. You have goodness, and then your truth. These are always coming out like the light and heat of the sun. Swedenborg makes that comparison often. And if we're trying to get heaven, it all has to do with how much of this are we letting in. If we let even just a little trickle, that's enough to get to heaven in there. But you have different combinations. Each of us accepts these two things in different ways. That's what makes us us, is our acceptance of the fundamental, the good intrinsic to love. So the source, that the beating heart of love, and then the essence or the structure of the truth intrinsic to faith is what he gives the language around here. Faith is the affection for truth, so the love of what's true. So the framework behind that, understanding the world rightly and being glad that it is like that. Some angels, Swedenborg writes, have a ton of love in there and just a limited amount of truth. Others have equal amounts. Others are really using love as a center, but they've got a lot of truth going on. This little space right here, that's heaven. Oh, look at me. I wrote heaven here instead of just pointing an arrow down from this one. So that heaven is that heaven is that heaven. Isn't that interesting to think about? What is heaven? That's actually the cause of heaven. And everything else that comes out of it, your heavenly houses and your heavenly clouds and the harps, and yeah, that's a harp. That all is a reflection of this in here. So, something that seems interesting to me about this is that really the source of the heaven thing is in, God sending out these things. So where's heaven actually coming from? And when we think about the source, does that change? And could that relate to the thing everyone in heaven believes? Here we go. It's right here. What's it going to be? Everyone in heaven believes that it's good to be nice, right? Or believes that God exists or something like that. What is it? Everyone in heaven knows, believes, and even perceives, meaning even can just tell rather than having it in the mind, that nothing good is intended and done by the self. And nothing true is thought and believed by the self. Now that's like a porcupine of a pet to be given. It's strange and it's pokey, like, youch. Nothing good, look at these spines, is intended and done by the self. Nothing true is thought and you're just taking away everything that's cool about us. How is that heaven? And how does that get us out of our dark clouds? And I've touched on this subject in the show before, but this may be the most direct treatment of it. And why? It must not be that bad. Because if it's leading to heaven, and heaven is everything that we strive for in happiness, how is this so essential to that? Everything good comes from the divine, which means from the Lord. Okay, well, and I think we would kind of admit that, right? That there's, and actually that's kind of cool to think that there's like a pure goodness that, and the things when we act kindly to each other and you see something that's elegant that somebody does for someone else, in a way, considering that, that's heaven streaming in, makes the moment even more potent and even more special. So, but why differentiate that nothing? Why is it important to have this concept in mind? How can this be actually our friend? How can this be a buddy to us? That's what we want to explore here. And why do angels, every angel to get in has got to have this. They've got to, this is like the angel, you got to memorize this. I was going to say the angel like Pledge of Allegiance or something. Everything comes from the divine, which means from the Lord. Did I read that already? Go back and check. Anything good and true from the self. What's the difference? Everything good and true from the self is not good or true because there is no life from the divine within it. Angels of the central heaven perceive and feel the inflow distinctly. The more they accept, the more they seem to be in heaven because they are more fully absorbed in love and faith, in the light of intelligence and wisdom, and in the heavenly joy, there we go, that's what we're looking for, that results. So this inflow is that the Lord is coming in and bringing the good, the love and the life, the stuff that's the protagonist in your story. If we think about, just picture like the moments in life when we are trying to sort things out, whether it's like disorganization that's pressing in on you, or it's fear, or you're sort of collapsing under the pressure of whatever stories are running around in your mind. Isn't there something, what's pushing back against that? That there is this, wait, no, life isn't like that. There's a better story. There are things that are valuable. That is the Lord showing up in you and pushing back against hell. And that angels don't just, that we feel that very distinctly as, okay, this is just one part of my thoughts versus another part of my thoughts, but angels can actually feel this coming in that we described up here. They can just tell, like you can feel, if somebody was turned a shower on over your head, and you can feel that hot water coming down. Angels can tell that, and they, because of that, that's tied to their ability to let it in, because you recognize the source and the sacredness of it. The more of that they accept, the more of that concept, and then the things that come through, the more they seem to be in heaven, because that gets rid of the primary block to heavenly joy, which is that we're alone. Or, as we'll see in a minute, that the point of life is the self rather than the point of life is love and what's good. That's the best way I can think of breaking it down. Once we see that all these qualities emanate from the Lord's divine nature, so once we can actually tell that everything we admire, because you might think of God, sorry, I'm pausing in the middle of a sentence, you might think of God as, okay, there's God, and God is a thing that is talked about in religious systems. God sets rules and kind of dictates things, but do you really have like a real love or admiration, unforced? I know I have to love God because God's in charge of everything. God has the purse strings of reality, but actually like be inspired and appreciative and spontaneously love what God is. This is the key to that. Once we see that all these qualities emanate from the Lord's divine nature, all these qualities, insert the thing you think is the most brilliantly good. Not just this is cool, but this is good. Like I fully believe in what this is. We can see that the Lord's divine nature makes heaven. It, meaning heaven, and check this line out. It is not anything the angels do with a sense of ownership. Angels are doing all kinds of stuff. Swedenborg gets up there and he talks about angels who are moving mountains and living in community and protecting people and healing and teaching and doing things that I'm sure are way more complex and cool than even the things we're doing right now at the cutting peak edge of our technological progress, our civilization, the ethical boundaries. The people that are doing the coolest stuff here, not that any stuff is cooler than the other, but there's some stuff that's cool, is not even on the level of what's going on in heaven. So there's so much doing. What's the difference? Because it's not necessarily heaven here, just because I was thinking the other day, yeah, we've got, and everyone has this thought, this is a very cliche thought, but we have so much more stuff that can do much more cool things. How much is life really improving for your average person, So it's not that because you can do complex stuff that even works to accomplish goals, that doesn't necessarily make heaven. What are we missing? Is it this? It's not something the angels do with a sense of ownership. So they're doing all this amazing stuff in heaven, but they don't believe, they're not saying, wow, this is great, this is all about me. And in all the subtle ways that really occurs, where we develop an air of superiority, or we tailor the results of what we're doing to favor only ourselves and the people that we consider our own, or even just do things inefficiently because we want to serve the self, ignore things that are true because they don't fit our worldview and we want things to be the way we want it. Whatever it is, angels are doing it with a sense of the Lord's inflow. And what is the Lord? The Lord is love for goodness, meaning love for the happiness of every conscious being. The unceasing effort of this little son is to make everybody lastingly happy in a healthy, constructive way forever. So when angels understand that they're tapping into that, and that it's not like, I had something, I'll slow scroll up here. It's not like I had something that was so cool, my abilities and stuff, and then I just said, okay, God's really the one who's doing it, so I gave that up to get into heaven. They're just realizing the truth, which is that we are an extension. We are a receiving vessel for this goodness and truth from God. And it's that coming in that creates the conditions that then allow angels to go out and do stuff. They don't do it with a sense of ownership. And actually, if you went up to an angel and said, don't you want to get back to taking credit for everything and believing it's you? They don't. That ruins their happiness. They wouldn't trade it for that. This is why in the Word, the heaven is called the Lord's dwelling. So you see in the Bible, that's where the Lord lives. It's not you get there and you're like, oh, there's the Lord's house up on top of that hill. What makes heaven, what differentiates heaven from the rest of the spiritual world, where you have people on all kinds of life choices with all kinds of spectrum of connection to what's good and true and not. The thing that differentiates heaven is that the Lord lives there and lives in that diagram of the goodness and truth coming in, and his throne. It's why people who live there are described as being in the Lord. We will explain later how the divine emanates from the Lord and fills heaven. You can check on that yourself because I know you downloaded the book. In their wisdom. So are they content to just stop here? The angels are actually going to take it even further. In their wisdom, angels press on even further, just like I said. They say it's not just everything good and everything true that comes from the Lord, but every bit of life as well. So it's not just that we have our life and it's ours, and we can, if we choose to partner with God, God can improve it. But that the ability to be conscious, first of all, but then also the ability to have a lasting positive direction in life, both of those are coming in from God. And this is something probably everyone's heard, but to actually believe it and think that, this very moment, if the inflow didn't continue to the next moment, I wouldn't get to go on and do my next move. That is actually really important here, because all of this negativity, that when we get really caught up in it, it is about plotting the next step in our story. Like we're looking out here, we're thinking about, here's the characters, here's this person that I'm enemies with for some reason, here's this situation I'm scared of that's bad, here's my memory that's been haunting me, here's me trying to break out of that, and I need to accomplish this goal. We're trying to move to the next step. It seems like, man, we have this huge task in front of us to deal with all that. When you just add the idea, like just add water, that if the Lord didn't give us everything in every moment, this whole thing would just vanish. Everything would just vanish. It changes the way you see that stuff. Wait, if God is that essential to the continuation of this, there must be some kind of divine agency even in the chaos of that thing that I erased. They support this by pointing out that nothing can come into being from itself. Everything presupposes something prior. This means that everything has to come into being from a first, which they call the essential reality of life, or the life of everything. Can you tell what I'm drawing right now? Okay. That's going to be pretty hard, but this is going to be the real test here. Okay. Oops. No, we don't want to do that. This marker is a little too thick. Okay, you can... Come on, that's a chicken, all right? The chicken or the egg. Which one? This is how it's... Okay, there had to be an egg to get a chicken, but before that there had to be another chicken and another egg. Swedenborg is saying it goes all the way back to something that is intrinsically different, something that can exist on its own. That is the Lord. Everything endures in the same way too. And this is kind of, you think about it like that, because enduring is a constant coming into being. If anything were not kept in constant connection with the first, through intermediate means, it would instantly collapse and disintegrate. They add that there's only one single wellspring of life, with human life as one stream flowing from it. Interesting, there's more going on than even just us. If it were not constantly supplied from its wellspring, it would immediately peter out. I'm telling you, keep that in mind, that to have this moment happen, there's got to be this connection. To me, it can come in handy in the clutch. Then, you can see I've told myself, stop. By now, just stop. We got one final concept. Still further. So the angels are really trying to impress on Swedenborg. Look, this is the key. This is the key to happiness. So you've got to listen. They say that nothing flows from that unique wellspring of life, the Lord, that is not divinely good and divinely true. These, and check this out, this is good. These affect every individual according to the way they are accepted. So what are we, if the good and the true are coming from the Lord? Where does that leave us? I've known people who come across this idea in Swedenborgian, that it shakes their sense of value and of worth. But Swedenborg also asserts that every single person is completely unique, and there could never be another person like it. So if you're just some kind of generic God receptor, then how could you be unique or differentiated from the next person? The way that we accept what's good and true, the way that when everything's coming through, you can feel it, good thoughts, bad thoughts, good impulses, bad impulses, that starts by being your initial filtration of this overall cosmic outflow, right? So you're getting a particular stream that's unique to your situation, the spiritual world, what you're connected to, what you love, what you believe. But then even then, we have this choice when it comes in. What do we act on? How do we consider each thing that comes through? How do we love what we experience? How do we think about what we experience? The way that we accept that stuff, that affects us. It gives us this particular potential to the particular essence of being, but then potential to help and serve and to participate in heaven in our own particular way. People who accept them into their faith and life are in heaven. So if we take the good and true things and put them into action and believe them or act on them, that makes heaven, while people who reject or stifle them transform them into hell. Hell is just us, misusing the underlying principles of life that come to us. They actually change what is good into evil and what is true into falsity, life into death. And everyone's got license to do that. And we have license to believe anything along the entire spectrum. But if you want to be in heaven, not that this one thing will guarantee you, but everybody who does make it into heaven does happen to believe the assertion that Swedenborg is making here, that nothing good is intended and done by the self, you could say, alone. Nothing true is thought and believed alone. This is all part of this bigger network. This is part of the Lord's intent in creation is you, but not just you. It's the heaven that's going to be inside you, and then how that heaven interacts with everyone else's heavens to become part of the superorganism that is heaven, providing the greatest use and service and the greatest happiness, the permanent joy, the deepest fulfillment. That's it. And that's done in partnership. It's better to have friends. And we got this divine friend looking out for us and all these other angelic manifestations of that divine connection. We're all going to get together and have a huge party. That's what's going to happen in life. And the step to getting there is this belief that, oh, hey, God's goodness is coming through all the time, and I don't want to be I want to be part of a team. I don't want to be pushing that away. That's the news from heaven. Do you get it? Does that lift you up? Let me know in the comments. Have you ever felt that as a powerful concept in your life? Is there anything you can take away from that and use this week? Like and subscribe. That makes the world go round. That makes it so that this channel survives and thrives. So that creates heaven for this channel. And we're going to continue this section because there's more. We want to go further into angels' perception of heaven and how angels react when you start to praise them or try to puff up their ego. That's next time. I'll see you then.